discuss chapter 3, which is why study literature in a college writing course. Usually my lectures are very interactive, but today is not going to be as interactive. If you have a question, please raise your hand and ask me the question, okay? The reason it's not going to be as interactive is because there's a lot of information to compress into the amount of time that we have. Okay? Good? All right. So, first off, what is literature? I want your definition, not the textbook definition. I am honestly asking you for what is literature? Yes.
For me, it's like anything that you can read for entertainment or learning.
Good. So you have evolved into the newer term of literature. That's awesome. Anybody else? Okay, so way back in the olden day, it used not to be what you believe and what I believe. Way back in the olden days, during the 14th and 18th centuries, literature was equated with literacy, the actual form of writing. Okay? You were literate if you were able to write. And the reason that this was equated to that was we used not to have the printing press. We used not to have paper mills. Do you know what books used to be made out of?
Papyrus.
Papyrus and scrolls. Yeah, so the scrolls goes with papyrus, and scrolls also goes with animal skins. So we used to have to skin animals or use papyrus to have something to write on. We've even have found human skin books, and there's some of those housed at the TU University. So you would have to grow a herd of cows or harvest papyrus in order to write books. So books were very expensive. It wasn't something that was readily available. So we relied on the oral tradition, O-R-A-L, oral tradition, in which we would tell stories to one another, and people would memorize these stories. But as we learned about ink and as we learned about paper, this began to change. So in the 19th century, the definition of literature changed, and literature became anything that was imaginative or creative. It would not have been newspapers, magazines, it wouldn't have been movies, music, anything like that. None of that would have been classified as literature. Then in 1970s, there was another movement. And it wanted a more modern definition, a more inclusive definition. So they said, okay, if we're going to restrict it to fiction, poetry, and drama, what are we going to do about everything else? Like Stephen King. He's not in the literary canon, yet people read Stephen King probably more than they read a textbook. And people are like, we have to allot that literature means more than just what you're studying in college. This is during the 1970s. Do you know why this might be happening? What is occurring in the 1960s to 1970s?
Vietnam.
In Vietnam, so we had people that are rallying and protesting. What happened before that? '60s, famous speech. So we have the civil rights protest, right? We also, on top of the civil rights protest, we have a certain gender that's starting to fight for equal rights. Yes, women's rights. So we have the feminist movement. So you have all these people that are starting to protest and rally. And they're like, hey, look, we are so restrictive in our society. We need to broaden the way that we think. And so literature needed to broaden its term as well. And so a new term was added to our discipline, and we called it creative nonfiction. Now, creative nonfiction would be your biographies, autobiographies, the newspaper articles that are written about true life events, things like that. Those would be creative nonfiction. And you can find this on page 44 in paragraph 4. And they refer to it as real events that inspire contemplation rather than action. Inspire contemplation rather than action. So if you watch I think it's football movie, The Titans, that is the football movie, right? It's all about what? What are they doing?
They have a perfect season.
They're having a perfect season. Why?
They have a new coach.
They-
Way different than before.
Yes, so their new coach was rallying them. He was inspiring them to change. Now, watching the movie isn't necessarily going to make every coach want to change the way that they coach, right? But it does cause us to contemplate and reflect upon our own personal choices and our own lives, and to determine what can we do with what we just saw, with the real life events. So now, I ask you, what does literature mean to you? What is literature? Is it only the stories that you're assigned in the classroom? Many of you are shaking your heads no. So what is it? Is it movies? Is it music? Is it art? Nobody wants to talk. So in my opinion, literature is movies, music, art, the essays that we're writing, the real life events. I think literature is even becoming the blogs and the blogs that people are doing, because these are discourses. These are things that people are talking about. But we have to be careful. Just because we classify it as literature doesn't mean that we have to study every single thing that's ever written, right? It may not interest you. May not want to know about it. It may be a fallacious piece of writing. That means it's not good literature. Yes? Now we get into the whole aesthetic discussion. Is it good or is it bad? I don't want to go there right now. What I want you to understand is that literature surrounds you every day. And in my classroom, I don't want you to be worried about, oh, I'm not studying the greats. I don't know who all the great authors are. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is that you enter the discourse of whatever topics that you're interested in. That's what I'm interested in. Because I want you to understand that literature is a very broad term from my perspective. Now, you will have other professors who do not agree with me. Are you hearing me clearly? But for my classroom, this is my definition, and have fun with it. Okay?